All right, where we left off yesterday, and hopefully everybody has gotten to this point, that when you ran this the last time, we were actually getting the data from the database. So when you ran it, it looked like this. Again, no styling or anything. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Is there anybody who did not get to that point? One more time. Anybody who did not get to that point? All right. We have a couple people who are absent because of illness or whatever today. So as always, I'm taping this and I will put it out there. Now, do I have your pretest for tomorrow? Yes. Am I going to give it to you? No, because I didn't write the key. I don't want to give you a test and have you work on it and then find out you can't do it. See what I'm saying? And it's not a hard test, but what I ask you to do in it, I want to go, and I'm not going to be able to do that till tonight. Sorry about that. All right, so I'll have it out either tonight or tomorrow morning, okay? But you will get time tomorrow to work on it, probably at least 2 hours. All right, are you going to need that? Some of you may finish it in 15 minutes. I really and truly don't know. But the plan is, again, right now, is to do that, and then around 2:30 or so, I'll just do it from scratch, all right, and show you pretty much what I'm looking for. And then hopefully what you'll find is when you come in to take the, quote, real test, unquote, on Friday, that it's very similar to what you'll be seeing tomorrow. All right? And also, I mentioned this to you before, but my plan right now, unless it changes, and I don't think it will, is that next Monday, we're going to start on yet another project, a project for a mythical bicycle shop. We're going to take it very slow. All right? Why? Because we're going to do it a little bit different. I think we're going to do it more intuitively and instinctively than the way the author does it. So we may not do every single thing he does as far as have 3 projects, etc., and all the other stuff, but we'll hopefully you'll get something out of it. How's that? All right. So again, since I asked that question and I didn't hear anybody say, no, I'm having problems or whatever, all right, then 2 things as we start up. The first thing, you look up on the screen there. If you do want to know more about the entity framework, you can go out to that URL that is shown on page 178. All right, that's the first thing. Second thing, we're going to pick it up. We're going to go through all of Chapter 7 today. That we should be able to do that. I don't know, but before the class is over. How's that? Chapter 8 is not only a short chapter, but there are a lot of things in the chapter where they say, now go out and do a unit test for this, which again, I'm asking you to try to do. The author gives you step-by-step instructions as far as what he's looking for. So in an ideal world, we're going to get done with both Chapter 7 and Chapter 8 today. What you're going to find is when we go over this project that will start on Monday, what my hope is between Monday and Tuesday, we can kind of echo what the author has done in Chapter 7 and 8, and we'll do that. Then on Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll go over Chapters 9 and 10, respectively. If we can get all that stuff done, great. And if we can, then Friday would be a lab day for people to catch up, etc. All right? And if we need a little bit more time, then we push it off into Friday. Then the next week will be the same kind of thing, in that Monday and Tuesday on our bike shop project, we'll mimic what they did in the book in 9 and 10. Then on Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll go through 11 and 12, which will finish the project. All right? There are a lot more things in the book, and that's only going to push us till about 6 weeks or so into the semester. All right, so we will go over a lot more of what's in the book, but my plan right now is to have us build at least a few things that aren't in the book. All right, if we do that, we're going to do it as a class. I'm going to give you step-by-step instructions, and that's what we're going to do. The book doesn't really have a very good example of using Ajax, so we're going to create our own, or else we'll add Ajax to this bike shop project. All right, the book doesn't, it ends, the last chapter is on spas, which are single page applications, but the example it's given is not great. So we may build our own spa, so to speak. All right, we'll see how it goes as we get going. All right. So again, I'm on page 178 near the top of the page, adding pagination. Couple things about this. All right. First of all, this is a key thing right here. This is saying that we're planning on putting on 4 records per page. Okay? Now, when you think about this, I'm going to just for a second go back and look at the stuff that's here. All right? If you remember when we looked at those 9 records that were in there, I believe there were 2 records for water sports. They're shown here, kayak and life jacket. There were like 3 that were shown for soccer. There was a ball, a corner flag, and a stadium, which I'm sure we're all going to buy. And then there were 4 items for chess. So there were a total of 9 items. Why am I telling you that? Well, when you look right here, we are saying that the page size, we want to show 4 per page. So in other words, we're not going to have a second page for any of these if we do them by category. Does that make sense? But if we look at all of them in total, there's 9 records. So there'd be 4 on the first page, then 4 on the second page, and 1 on the third page. So as always, it depends on how you're looking at something and whether or not you're going to provide categorization. All right? And I think we do get into that in here. All right. So the first thing the author wants us to do is to come in, go open up in your project and in your sportstore.web UI, the author wants you to come in and under controllers, I'm going to close a few things because mine's a little messy, but under controllers, the author wants you to open up your product controller. That's right now the only thing that's in there is the product controller. All right? So, just following the author's lead here, the first thing we want to do is right near the top, we've got that private product repository. Right underneath that, we're going to put in the thing for the page size. All right? So in other words, if you look on the screen, right there, add that. Right there. I'm in the product controller.cs file. I'm near the top of that file. All right? One thing that I plan on doing, now this may, I don't know, you may like what I'm about to say or hate it, but when we go through this example, this bike shop as a class, I'm going to fill it up with documentation. All right, that way if you ever wanted to go back, I mean, you're still going to grab this project when we start getting done with it, and you're going to make it your own. All right? Tom's might be Tom's Bike Shop. You know, Luke's might be Luke's Bicycle Emporium. I don't care. But the basic functionality between all of them should be the same. All right? So that was the first thing that we were asked to do in here. Next, we are told to add a new method. You can see that the method is called list. Now notice what they have here. It looks a little bit weird, for lack of better words. You may remember this, you may not, but as we start going through this, this is an actual line of code that's right there in blue. That is a line. That is a line of link. All right? And basically, for lack of better words, it's saying, hey, what I want you to do is I want you to list all of the records that I have in here. Okay? But only show 4 per page. Does that make sense? All right? Now, the author explains it in much more depth than I do, so let's take a look at it before we add it. Okay, it says here the page size field says you want 4 products per page. That makes sense. All right, I have added an optional parameter. So look at this. In here, the reason that you typically do it like that with a list method, the reason you typically put in an optional parameter like that is when the person first brings that list, that list option up, they're typically going to want to start at the beginning. Does that make sense? All right, regardless of how many records you have. So you'd be on page 1. So what this is saying is what you'll be able to do once this starts working, is you'll be able to say list, and saying list, so running it and having, the name of your controller /list will be the same thing as saying /list/1. It'll be the same thing. But if there's 3 pages of records, you could say 2 or 3 as well. And again, you're going to see that in just a minute. All right? So again, the author says if it's called without a parameter, it's treated as though you supplied a 1, list 1. All right? It says the effect of this action displays the first page. Yeah, we already talked about that. Now, this is the other thing. Within the body, we get the product objects, order them by primary key, skip over the products that occur before the start of the page, of the current page rather, and take the number. In English, what that means is we want to get all 9 of these products. All right? And when we start using list and we give it a value in here, so if we put 3 in there, all right, if we put 3, all right, what does that mean? We want the third page. All right, there's 9 records total, and we're saying that we want four records per page. So if we ask for page 3, we've already gone through page 1, which are records 1 to 4. We've gone through page 2, which are records 5 to 8. We're now on page 3, so we should just get record 9. Does that make sense to everyone? All right? I mean, it's something that you have to understand. All right? And I appreciate, you might be going on, you might be doing it yourselves, but you got to hear this stuff. Because it's one thing to just be keying in stuff out of a book. It's another thing where hopefully you have some understanding of what you're keying in. All right? And I've said this before, and not to any of you in here, but I have had students in the past who literally believe, well, if I get a job and I can't figure out what to do, I'll just go up, I'll just go and Google it, and there'll be an answer out there. Do you really think that's the truth? Because I don't. You might be able to find a project that's somewhat similar to what you're doing. That'd give you a start. All right, but I don't think there's going to be any 2 companies that are doing something the exact same way anyway. All right. So if you look in here, what you'll notice, well, first let's grab this. I'm going to grab this list that's right there. All right, I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to go back to my product controller, and I'm going to put it in at the bottom. All right. Now, when you look, see, we already got that. Yeah. But previously, all we were telling it to do, I'm going to remove this or comment it out. But previously, we're just saying, show us every product. That works fine, but what if you've got 500 products? All right. Then it starts breaking down. After a certain point, it starts breaking down. So we don't need this one anymore. I'll just comment it out. All right. And we're putting this in. Okay. Now, if you notice next, I'm going to run this in just a second. This is where the author says there's a unit test. I would like you to try those. I think that if you fill up your unit test thing and you go in potentially for a job and the person that you are interviewing with, it's not impossible they're going to say, hey, have you ever had any practice doing any unit tests? And I don't mean you pull out the project. You could, but at least you'll know what they're talking about. And it's pretty important that you do. When I started writing unit tests, when I was a programmer, I had no idea what they were or what they were supposed to be doing. And most people who read my test design document, that's how they felt. He doesn't have a clue as to what he's doing. All right? So a lot of them gave me a lot of help until it was a halfway decent document. All right, so you will go through this yourselves on 179 and the top of page 180. All right? So this brings us to page 180 near the top, displaying page links. It says if you run the application, you will see there's only 4 items shown on the page. Let's double check and see if that happens. So I'm going to do a file, save all. Again, if you copied this in, make sure you either get rid of or remove the other one that was in there because that's now redundant. All right. So I'm going to run this, and let's see if we indeed do get 4 records per page. It may not look a lot different from where it was before. Excuse me. So there's kayak, life jacket, soccer ball, corner flags. There's 4. I didn't do this before, probably should have. But with what we had up there before, I could have gone through the whole thing, and it would have shown me all 9 records. Again, we put no styling on this whatsoever yet. We'll do that next. All right. So the author says we can also come through here and do this. So with what we've got, you look up on the screen here, after localhost, you could put question mark page equal to. Let's try and see what happens. All right. So question mark page equal to. All right. So you see what's up there now: life jacket, soccer ball, corner flags, and kayak. Once I put that in and I hit enter, now I've got stadium, thinking cap, unsteady chair, and human chessboard. Finally, if I change that to a 3, remember there's only 9 products in here, I get bling bling king. All right. Now if I come in here and I do this, I'm not getting an error, it's just not finding anything. Does all that make sense? All right. But I have changed the natural way that this acts or reacts, however you want to look at it. Okay? So the author says, of course, there's no way to figure out that these query parameters exist. In other words, I don't know about you, but personally, I wouldn't expect Joe or Jane, average user, to know that to iterate between pages, they'd have to put in question mark page equal with a number in there. All right? So what the author's saying is, for lack of better words, that's too much work for them to do. So let's make it easier for them. All right? This is the way that it's done. All right? The way the author does it. Says, excuse me. It says, again, there's no way. Instead, I need to render some page links at the bottom of the list of products. In other words, when we first do it, and I showed you this the other day, it's going to look like this. 1, 2, 3. And each page will have a hyperlink under it. And that'll be how you'll be able to iterate from page to page. Then when we start the next section and we go over adding bootstrap to it, we'll make that look nice. All right? So the author says, to do this, I'm going to implement a reusable HTML helper similar to the text box for and the begin form. It will generate the HTML markup for the navigation links I require. There are, again, different ways this could be done. This is the way this author chooses to do things. And what I mean, again, is this author chooses that basically whenever he creates something new, he creates a new class for it and figures out which folder it belongs in and which project it belongs in. So it says here, to support this, we're going to pass the information to the view about the number of pages available, the current page, and the number of products in the page. The easiest way to do this is to create a view model. Again, if you remember, one of the questions that you were asked on an earlier written test was, what is MVVM? Model view, view model. And the answer to that question was, there's no controller. But the view model kind of takes the place of the controller, and depending on how you set it up, you can have a fatter view where it has a little logic in it, or a thinner view which doesn't have the logic in it. All right? So the author says we are to add a class called paging info to the models folder. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the models folder, stop my run, go to the models folder, all right. Inside of our web UI, right mouse click, add, class, double check, I think it was page info with a big P and big I, but let's double check, all right. So paging info. So I'm going to add that class right now. Paging info. And again, don't want to insult anyone's intelligence. You probably already figured this out. When you put it in like that, you can put in the .cs, but if you leave it off, it defaults to you putting in the .cs. So whatever way is easier for you, I'll just leave it off here. And you'll notice paginginfo.cs, there it is right there. All right, and here's the code. So what do we have in here? Well, take a look at what we have in here. What information do we need? Please look up on the screen here. How many total items do we have? Well, now currently it's 9, but it could be 900, 9,000. All right. How many items do we want per page? 4 is what we put before. All right. What's our current page? We know when we start it's on page 1. We know one way now. Now we know one way that we can figure out, or we can pass in, and we have to be able to figure out the current page. That's what this does. And it does it exactly the same way you think it would. It says, how many items do we have? And it divides that by items per page. Please look either on your book, in your book, or on the page, or on the screen rather. Notice they're using the ceiling function. That's in case you don't have, you get down to the end. So I can use the 9, but let's grab 15. All right? So we've got 15 items. Page 1, we'll have items 1 to 4. Page 2, 5 to 8. Page 3, 9 to 12. Page 4, all right? There's 15 items, so it'll have 13 to 15. In other words, it won't have 4. By using the ceiling function, we're saying treat it as though there are 4 there. We don't want it where it doesn't show the last couple items on the last page, which is the reason for them adding that. All right? So I'm going to just grab everything that's here in the paginfo.cs, copy it to the clipboard, and replace what is currently in there. All right? Again, a view model is not part of the domain model. It's a convenient class. Some books will say it's a utility class. All right? What's a utility class? It's a helper class that can or could conceivably be used in more than one area in the program. All right? Okay. It says to emphasize this, I put it in the Web UI project to keep it separate from the domain model classes. So it's not under domain, in other words. All right. Now that I have a view model, I can implement the HTML helper method, which I'm going to call page links. Create a new folder in Web UI called HTML helpers. So I'm going to do that first. All right. Under Web UI, right under the project name, I'm going to right mouse click. I'm going to choose add. And I'm going to choose new folder. And was it plural or singular? Sorry. We are to call that HTML helpers. All right, so this new folder will be called HTML helpers. I think that's how they put it in there. Whoops. Yep. And we're going to put a new class in there then called paginhelpers.cs. All right. One thing about this author, he's very deliberate in the way he codes. He says that rather than using existing HTML helpers, I'm going to create my own. Since I'm going to create my own HTML helpers, and as of right now, I don't know how many I'll have, I'm going to put them into their own folder. And since I'm going to be using them with my interface, they belong in, that folder belongs in the sportstore.webui folder. All right? So I'm going to come in here, right mouse click on that new HTML helpers folder, add class, and we are supposed to call that paginghelpers.cs. And the code for that is shown right here. All right, I'm going to knock down my size here so I can grab all of this. So let's copy it in, and after it's copied, let's go over the code. Now, I want to tell you, last night I went home and I went back and I reread the Chapter 8 stuff for today. Okay? And I started thinking to myself, okay, what if I'm a student in this class? Just step away for a second. I'm not the instructor. I'm a student in this class. Okay? Where am I right now? Well, some of the stuff he says makes sense. Some of it is so far out there and I've never heard it, it makes no sense. So on a 1 to 10, maybe I'm at a 5. That's pretty good. All right? This guy is going through a project, and the project that he is going through, although he says it's a very simple project, it may be, but if you've never done this stuff before, it's not. All right? So like I said, I'm trying to take plenty of time going over this. I'm not trying to rush anybody through it. All right. So what do we have in here? Well, look at this. Look at the name. The name of this routine is page lengths. See that? And it's going to return an MVC HTML. All right? In other words, it's going to return page lengths. What this is going to do right here, it says it generates the HTML for a set of page links. It's going to create this thing. The 1, 2, 3 with the underlines. All right? Is this the only way to do it? No. We're going to do it next week with this other project. We're not going to create a new class. We're going to call built-in stuff to do it. Why? Because I think it might be easier for you to understand doing it that way. All right? We'll see as we go on. So it says here, the function parameter accepts a delegate that it uses to generate the links to other pages. What does that mean? Well, you all know what a delegate is. Maybe not a C# delegate, but for instance, if the president were to appoint someone as a delegate, let's say, to the United Nations, what does that mean? That person is representing the president, and in our case, the country, at the United Nations. In much the same way, when you have a delegate, what you're saying is the code that normally would do the work is passing off the work to another method. That method becomes the delegate and will do the work. So let's try this. I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to do a file save all, and I'm going to run the program again. Again, we still have no styling on this whatsoever. It's ugly. All right. Thought we'd get our page numbers, but maybe we haven't gotten that far yet. All right. So again, the author says another unit test where you come in here and you create some page links. All of this stuff, to my knowledge, all this stuff for the unit tests, all right, will go in your unit test folder. Does that make sense? Your unit test folder is set up for you to do unit tests in. In other words, the author was right here. You would not want to intermix testing code with actual application code. All right? All right. The next thing the author talks about right here is an extension method. Again, you were asked a question on a written test for either chapters 3 or 4, I think. What is an extension method? You may or may not remember. But An extension method is a method you can add to a class, to an existing class, whether or not you own that class. So I can go and if I've got the string class in C#, and I think to myself, man, I wish the C# string class had method X. I can add method X to the C# string class as an extension method. All right. Let's see. Okay, now, please look at the screen. This is kind of important. All right, maybe you've already gone on and done this, but we want to add a line to our web config file. See this line? But for the first time, we want to add it to the other web config file. Okay, so in here, you want to go under Views, open up your Views folder, find your web config file that's under Views. Not the one on the bottom. That's the global one. This is the one if you want all of your views to be able to share something. That's the one we want. So please open the correct one where they've got all these add namespaces here. Put in a line at the bottom. For me, it's line 20. It should be, I would think, for you too. And add that namespace. What that says is under Sports Store UI, everything that's under HTML helpers, I want that available to all my views. All right? Not a bad time to do a file save all. I don't think we need to put anything else into this web config. That might be it for the whole project. I don't remember. All right? But let's jump back. Every namespace the author says that I refer to in a Razor view needs to be used explicitly. Declaring it here, all right, just means there's a little less work we're going to have to do. That's all. All right. Adding the view model data. The author says here, I'm on the bottom of 183. We're not quite ready to use the HTML helper method. That's why when I ran it, we didn't get the 1, 2, 3. All right. I have yet to provide an instance of the paging info view model class to the view. So the view right now doesn't know about this paging info thing that we provided earlier. It says I could do this using the view bag feature, but rather than doing that, it says I'm going to send it from the controller to the view. I want you to understand the difference between these. View bag is something that's temporary. All right? But if I make it available in the controller, it should persist if need be. All right? So it says to do this, I added a class file, another one, to the models folder called product list view model.cs. See that? So that's the first thing we're going to do. Go back to the models folder, right mouse click, add class. The author calls this paging list view model.cs. All right. Hit enter. There it is. The actual code for it is shown here in figure 720. It's not big. Half dozen or so lines on page 184. So I'm going to copy those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines, remove what's there, and paste that in. All right. Then it says now we can update the list option in our product controller. What does that mean? We have to reopen the product controller.cs file, which is under our controllers folder. And if you look up on the screen, first thing we want to do is we want to add that using statement that's shown towards the middle bottom, you might say, of page 184. So I'm going to open up my product controller. All right. And under the using statements that are here, I'm going to add that using statement. It immediately grays out. We're not doing anything with it yet. We'll do that in a minute. All right. So look what we've done here. We want to change the list option. We're changing our list option. All the code that goes in there is now going to look like this. So let's put it in and then go back, deconstruct it, or look at what's in there. right? If I just do this, can somebody tell me? All right, and somehow I lost a curly brace, but I'll put that back. Can somebody tell me, looking at this error that's right here, why are we getting that? What did I remove? What's not in this statement that was in here before? The word return. We're telling it here it has to return a view result. And we don't even have a return statement in here. So, there's more on the next page. So I've already put this in. Now I've got to put in this. All right. Once you put in everything, what happens? Well, as you can tell, the error goes away. All right. Again, are we to the right point yet? I don't know. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to run it. All right. Now it's telling me the model type passed in is of this type, but the dictionary contains something else. So there's something that I just did that it doesn't like. That's why you should at least incrementally be running this. So if there's an error, we can fix it. All right, or hopefully at least we can fix it. All right, let's take a look. It says these changes pass a product list view model as objects to the view. All right, I'm going to go back and re-grab everything. I think that it's something we haven't done yet, but I'm not sure, so I'm going to go back and do it this way. Right? So the good news is at least I have no errors now. My guess is when I run this, I'm still going to get an error, but we'll see. Okay. Model item passed is of type this list view model, but the dictionary requires this. All right, so either I did something wrong or we're not far enough yet. So let's keep going on. All right, there's another unit test that goes through this. Okay, and that jumps us down to the bottom of page 186. All right. The author says the view is currently expecting a sequence of product objects, so I need to update the list.cshtml to deal with that. So I need to add this to the top of my list.cshtml file. The line that's at the bottom of page 186. So find my list.cshtml file, go back up to the top of it, and add the @model statement that's shown. In fact, I think I might have put it in the wrong place, but I'm going to double check. Okay, I think it's actually okay where it is, but we're going to find out anyway. All right, now in the for each, that line changes as shown on page 187. Okay, no errors, that's always a good sign. Well, see, I say that, now I get some errors, but we'll see. All right. The author says, I've changed the @model directive to tell Razor that I'm working with a different model type. All right. So we've got that @model, and I believe now I should remove the one that's at the top, this one. So I'm going to comment this one out. All right, that's the first thing I did. That got rid of my errors. All right, so the author says, we're almost done with this section here. I have everything in place to add links to the list view. I created the view model that contains the paging information, updated the controller, and changed the @model directive accordingly. All that remains is to call the HTML helper method from the view. It says what you see here. So right under the for each, we want to put this in. All right, so you're in list.cshtml. After the for each, you want to add that div. All right, do a file, save all, run it. And let's see if now we have links. And there they are at the bottom. So now I can go to page 2. Now I can go to page 3. And I can jump back and forth. Again, not styled, so not really looking very nice, but it now is functional. All right? So the author says if you run the application, you will see the new page links as illustrated on the next page. The style is still basic, which will get fixed later. What is important to realize is that the links take the user from page to page and allow you to see all products. And there you go. If you look on the screen, yours should now be acting or reacting just like what's shown here on page 188. All right? Now, I don't know why the author put some of this stuff in, but I want to explain it to you anyway. If you look up on the screen, please. You may or may not have ever even heard of this. The author says here, why not just use a grid view? And you're like, I have no idea, because I don't know what the heck a grid view is. A grid view looks like a spreadsheet. It lays out all the records on the page, and it has them in a column or type of format. I believe the reason that we don't use a grid view here is a grid view is more associated with ASP.NET web forms and not with ASP.NET MVC. Could you use it in here and get it to work? Probably. Would it be more work or less work than what we just did? I don't know. I didn't try it. All right. When I taught this class a couple of years ago here, this is what we used. We did ASP.NET web forms, and when we did the database stuff, we used grid view more than anything else. All right. One more thing here, and then it'll get us to like page 190, styling the content. But I want to do this last thing here. If you look, the author says, let's improve the URLs. Please look at the screen here. The second one in blue that you see up here, many books will call it a pretty URL because it does not have in it a query string. All right? And we'll see if we can even tighten it up a little bit more later. But the author says the links work, but they still use the query string. So in other words, let's run this one more time, all right? Let's run this one more time. You know now what it looks like. You know that it works because you've seen it. However, if you look up on the screen here, because I didn't point this out before, shame on me. So when I come up to here and I go to 2, notice page equal 2 with a question mark. And page question mark page equal 3. And when you start to iterate back, you even get the question mark page equal 1. That's considered, for lack of better words, a little unprofessional. And the author says, let's get rid of both the question mark and the equal sign and let them know exactly where they are. That will involve making a change to our route config file. We may make more changes in the future to our route config file. So the author says MVC makes it easy to change the URL scheme because it uses the routing feature. So we're going to want to go into our app start folder and find our route config file and put in this. Please look up on the screen here. We're adding a new route. Once you do this, as is shown right here, the most general route has to be at the bottom. Is there anybody who did not hear that? If I have 10 different routes, they have to go from the most specific to the most general. If I put this one down here first, it'll never even see this stuff. All right? But what this is saying in here, all right, name null means the name doesn't matter, but for the URL, we want to put it in as page followed by the page number instead of using a query string. And that is when we bring up the list view from the product controller. The other reason that it's really important is notice our default also is product and list. So if you put this one underneath this one, it would never see that one. So I'm going to grab this code here, copy it to the clipboard, go back and open up our app start. From there, open up our route config, and right up above our current route, put in that new one. Again, I like to pretty it up a bit. So there's our name, the URL, the defaults. All right? All right. And again, I can't overplay this too much. The author says it too. All right. In chapters 15 and 16, the author goes into routing in more depth and breadth of coverage than he has thus far. All right. It says this is the only alteration required to change that URL. So let's go take a look. So in other words, I'm going to come back here, File, Save All, run the program. And you'll notice once this comes down and we go down to here and I click 2, it now says page 2, not question mark page equal to. When I check, it's now page 3 and it's now page 1. All right? And that may not sound like a big thing, but it really and truly is. Again, what you never ever want to do when you're creating a site for somebody is put up something in there, even worse for the people who are going to use it, that they can't understand. You want to make things super simple. All right? I watched a video once and this guy said, you want to dumb it down to the max. All right? And again, realizing that senior citizens, and I'm included, I guess, in there, but senior citizens have a harder time with this stuff than little kids. All right? Okay, so let's stop the run here. That brings us to styling the content, which is on the middle of page 190. All right, it's 130. Let's come back, please, at 145. All right?